The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for supporting our channel by watching and listening.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Almost forgot what day of the week it was because I was on vacation all last week. So thank you all for joining in. I want to do a shout out to MB Radio. Thank you so much for picking me up. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for everybody who has jumped in the chats, etc. I really, really appreciate you. So a couple of things for those of you who are not familiar with my channel. When we hit our next big milestone, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. Several of the items are going to be signed by veteran authors, their books. And most of these you can find right there on Amazon as well. And the first one is Quiet Heroes, Stories from the Front Lines of the Vietnam War by Larry Burke. He has been a guest on my show. There is a 2-part show. Feel free to go out. You can search Larry Burke and find his. The next is from another great veteran, and he's an author. This is his second book. It is a fictional book called Defending the Eagle. The second of 7 books that he's anticipating writing, and I'm really excited. These are some really great reads because I absolutely love the fiction of that. And then for another one, we have a couple of these that have been donated from James Blackwell, and he's actually a Korean War historian. And this is the B-29 machine gunners in the Korean War, called Gunners. If any of those are interesting to you, check them out. All of them except for Gunners you can find on Amazon. And then Gunners, you can go to his website, jamesblackwellauthor.com. So give our veterans a little bit of love. Check them out. I'm sure they'd appreciate that. And let us know what you think of those books. So I have a wonderful guest waiting, and so please help me welcome Terri Lynch to the stage. Hello, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Doing excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time coming on the channel, and I know you're very busy as well, so it's much appreciated. And again, thank you for your service as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So Travis, this is Carolee and Terri. This is gonna be awesome. I'm excited. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's the one that introduced us.
Yes, he absolutely was. Great guy. Can't say enough about Travis. So I like to ask my guests to tell me a little bit about who they were as a child.
Well, I grew up in Idaho. My grandparents had a dairy farm, a small dairy farm. It wasn't a big production dairy farm. It was a family dairy farm. And my uncle milked cows every night. He'd call them in and he'd milk the cows. And then we would take the big milk barrels to the milk house, and then the milkman would pick them up. And he'd deliver glass bottle milk when he came back. So it was kind of fun. And we thought that the cement bathtub that the cans went in was the best swimming pool ever because it was so cool in the milk house because it's all concrete and the water stayed really cold. So we used to play in there. We used to play in the hay bales, and the silage. I don't know if most people know what silage is, but it's a cattle feed and it gets really warm and it can actually ignite when in the proper, like if it's got sun hitting it, whatever, it can actually start to combust. But we'd play in there and I don't know why. That just sounds really awful right now. But we play.
The older you get, right? The more you process and think back at the silly things we did as children.
Yes, exactly. But we had a lot of fun in there. So my grandma would watch us when my mom was working, and so we would play on the farm when we were there with my grandma and my uncle. So we had a lot of fun growing up, kind of in that environment, and milking cows ourselves because we hand milked some cows too because my uncle let us do that, and he had chinchillas and lilacs were one of the big flowers around in Idaho. That's, we have crepe myrtles in Texas, but in Idaho they have lilacs. So there was lilacs everywhere, real pretty. So, kind of used to growing up in that environment, even though I really lived in town. But when I went to grandma's house, we were out in the country.
Yeah. I love lilacs. I love the smell of them. That's my favorite smell is lilacs.
They're very nice.
Yes. So Jason said his mom was raised in Grangeville.
Oh, Idaho? Grangeville,
Yep.
Idaho? Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
Small world.
Jose says, hello, Terri.
Hi, Jose.
So what was it like for you then for your school? Small town?
Well, so I was in Idaho until I was about in the 6th grade. And then after that, we moved to Oregon. So we moved to Burns, Oregon, which was a very, very small town of about
I know exactly
2,000.
where that is. Yes.
Yeah.
And so does my husband.
Because he was assigned there or something? Because there was a radar site there.
No, family.
Okay. It's a very small place because
Yes.
Burns and Hines were together and you thought you weren't really leaving one town to go to the next, but they were two separate towns, but they were so close together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived there from the 7th and 8th grade till my freshman year. And then I moved to Corvallis, Oregon and stayed there for 2 years, I think. And then we moved back to Idaho. So I spent a lot of time in a lot of different school systems. So it made it really difficult because after we moved back to Idaho, we moved to Oklahoma. So we moved to Tulsa and
Okay.
yeah, so I finished school. Well, I say I finished. I just I did my junior year and then I said I'm moving back to Idaho. So I didn't actually finish my senior year in Tulsa. I moved back and then I started the GED process because I was like, I'm done moving schools. I'm done being in all these different places. So I said, let me just get my GED, and then I got married. So that's what I did. So yeah, the school problem, I went to like 5 different high schools, and that was a problem.
And the reason you went to 5 different high schools and you moved so much?
My stepdad moved around with a friend of his. They kind of moved back and forth different places. He kind of followed him around. So we just picked up and went wherever they went pretty much.
Nice.
And that's how we ended up in all those different places.
Very cool. Jason says his grandparents actually lived in Burns and they were loggers. So
yeah, that's definitely the area. If you go towards Bend, you're going to find all the trees because otherwise it's high desert and you're looking for birds at that point.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, okay. While you were in school, did you do any sports of any kind or did you have that opportunity?
I really didn't do sports per se. I did like to run, so I did a little bit of that, but mostly I played in band. So I was in marching band and concert band and jazz band. So band was really what I did versus, the athletic stuff.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I did choir. I was not athletic at all. I'd get overheated really quickly to the point where they'd be afraid I was going to totally black out. So,
Oh my goodness.
so I went the easier route and did and sang. So, but that's all right. All right. So you get through your GED, and what happened after that?
Well, my husband joined active duty Army, and we got sent over to, so we went from there to Georgia. So we were at Fort Benning. And then after we'd only been there a year, then we got orders, or he got orders for Germany. So then we went to Germany from there.
Okay. What was it that made you decide that you wanted to join the military, and specifically the branch that you chose?
So he joined the Army, and I polished all the boots and I ironed all the uniforms. I'm like, well, doggone, I might as well just join too, because I'm doing all the work to look like a soldier. I might as well be one. So when we were over in Germany, he's now my ex-husband, but when we were over in Germany, they were doing the Grand Rudman Act, where they were getting everybody out of the military early to save money for the government. So he only had a 3-year enlistment, and so he wasn't command sponsored when we went over to Germany, because he said they wouldn't let him. I don't know whether they would or not. I'm not sure. But so we went over there on command sponsored. So he didn't have an extra length of time for me going over there and being there. I paid my own way. So when the Grant Rudman Act came about, he got out of the military about 4 or 5 months early, and we came back to the States and came back to Tulsa. But he decided that the marriage wasn't for him anymore, and so he left, and he rejoined the active duty Army in California. He got assigned to Fort Ord, and he went there. So then I stayed behind. So
I am well aware of Fort Ord. That's my history.
That's what we talked about. So
yes.
I can't wait to talk about it when I interview you on my show.
Yes, and I'm super excited about that. And we'll definitely bring that up for anyone interested who's watching tonight. You'll be able to check that out on Terri's show, Tracer Rounds. So really excited for that. So you decide you go in to the recruiter's office. Is that how that worked?
Yeah. So I got divorced, and he went his way, I went my way. And so I met somebody, and so not long after I got remarried, and I just decided though that I wanted to join the military, and he thought that was a good idea too. My husband at the time, he thought it was a good idea. So I was like, well, I want to go active duty, but then his mother said, well, like, why would you want to follow her around? You're just like a puppy dog on a leash. Why is that a good idea? And so she wanted him to stay and didn't want him to go follow me anywhere. And so we decided on the reserves. And so I joined the reserves and went that route. But I'd always thought the Army was a cool branch to be in. I was always very supportive of military. My stepfather, the one that moved a lot, he was in the Air Guard Reserve. So he had a 26-year career in the Air Guard Reserve, and we always went back to Idaho for his drill. So anytime that he had drill weekend, we went, or they call it M-Day, but anytime we went for his drills, we went back to Idaho to visit family, and then he did his drill weekend, and then we went back wherever we were living at the time, except for Oklahoma. He was already out by then. Oh, no, he actually was part of the 138th Air Wing in Tulsa. So he actually moved his assignment to Tulsa.
Okay. So the Army's been around for a very long time. Yeah. When it comes to the reserves, and you went through basic training.
Yes.
And tell me what it was like for you the moment you got to basic training.
Oh
what was going through your mind?
I was like, man, did I just make a mistake or what? I was like, oh man, this is not what I was thinking it was. I was like, it was shell shock. A lot of people got off the bus, and the first thing out of the drill sergeant's mouth is, "You're not back on the block, so just get with the program, folks." He made sure we knew right away that he was in charge and that we were no longer where we came from anymore. So it was his world, and we were living in it.
Wow. And you're probably thinking, what did I just get myself into? They didn't tell me about this part.
Well, they always say that recruiters lie to you about things, and to some degree, I don't know that they lie, but they don't tell whole truths about what it's really like. I mean, they tell you and they give you information, but I think they leave some parts out for you to discover on your own.
Yeah.
Because if you discover them too early in advance, you might not go. So I think that's why they do that. And I had 2 kids at the time. I had a young one and I had a little bit older one, so it was really hard to want to leave, and especially go to be yelled at. You're like, I'm not sure I signed up for this, but in truth, we did.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
yes, I did sign up for it.
So tell me what it was like then going through basic training. Was there a specific skill that you were learning that you enjoyed more than others?
So basic training was really a lot of fun, and it's not really all that hard, other than it's hard because you lack of sleep, and then you're dealing with all these other people that are in your platoon, and some of them just don't get with the program, just want to make a problem. So it's really getting to all these personalities and all these cultural differences to mesh. So that's really where the problem comes in. It's not really what you're having to do. It's really who you're having to do it with and getting everybody on the same page. So drill sergeant always punishes everybody if somebody won't get on the same page. So we all learn very quickly, either you get with the program or we help you get with the program, because we're tired of being smoked.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, being that you weren't really into sports, you liked running, but not, into the general kinds of sports that you would have during high school. Running probably wasn't an issue for you, but what about all of the rest of the PT?
Yeah, it was really tough, because they're very particular about what counts as a push-up and what does not, and what counts as a sit-up and what does not. Yeah. So you could be doing 20 push-ups and they count 1. You're at 1. You're at 1. You're at 1. You're like, what? I've just done like 30. Are you kidding me? So yeah, it definitely was a challenge, and it definitely that part of it definitely was hard too. But the other things, the other parts of basic training, the other activities you had to do weren't that bad. But doing the PT test correctly and getting all your reps counted, that was a chore, and that was a challenge. And all of us girls, I think, for the most part, save some, because there were some girls that were really good at push-ups, and I'm like, they'd count everything they did. But the rest of us really struggled through it, at least in my platoon. That doesn't mean all girls are struggling with push-ups, but we all did sit-ups fairly well, because really they say females do better sit-ups than males, and then males do better push-ups than females. And they're faster runners too, and that's why there's scales for the sexes on those things, because we can't compete, generally speaking. Right. Physiologically, we can't compete with the numbers that the males are made to do, and then on the run too, they're a lot faster. Sit-ups, they evened those out and said, everybody should be able to do those at the same rate. But the other ones, they're definitely different. Yeah, rep counting is an art form. It sure is. It is, Travis. You're at 1. You're at 1.
That's right. That's right. I will get there or die trying.
That's right.
So being that you were kind of raised a little bit on a farm, did you guys have the opportunity to do any shooting of any kind, or was that something new that you learned once you joined the Army?
Well, I'd shot a gun a couple of times, but just, we didn't, my grandma, I don't think really liked guns. I mean, I don't think she didn't like them. I just don't think they had any around. I just don't think that was something that was necessary. where the little farm was. I just don't think that. I think there was BB guns around, as I recall, but they didn't ever teach us to shoot them. I did that when I was in high school when we lived in Burns. We went out on Radar Hill and started shooting things up with BB guns and the shotgun. And the first shotgun I held, and I didn't pull it in because they didn't warn me to pull it into my shoulder, and so I shot it and it went boom, and it threw me backwards for a couple of steps. And I'm like, okay, lesson learned. You hold that tight into your shoulder so you don't get knocked off your feet.
Yes. With all rifles and shotguns, you hold it tight into that shoulder. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you went through that then in basic training, you then already had kind of an idea of how to hold a gun, or a rifle. And so not a problem or an issue for you.
No, did just fine on qualifying. They say actually females shoot better than males, which, I was kind of surprised to hear that, but that they say that the statistics show that's true. And I think that's true because females take more time to aim and then fire instead of just, doing it quickly like males would tend to do, and don't really take as much time and like aiming and, making sure everything's just right. So maybe that's it. I don't know, but I've just heard that.
I've always thought it's because women can multitask faster, so we can, in our head, go through all the steps really quickly to make sure that our shot is pretty good. Now, I do know we have several 2A people in the chats, so they may disagree. Feel free to put the comments out there. We want to hear them. But so, all right, you go get through your basic training. Now, what was the MOS that you had signed up for?
Originally, it was legal specialist. That's what I did.
Okay. All right. And what made you decide to go that route?
Well, when I joined, it was 1991 is when I enlisted, June 4th, 1991. And I wanted to be military police is what I wanted to be. But the war was going on and they weren't backfilling any units. So the reserve units that had military police in them, they were all deployed, but they weren't backfilling any military police positions. So I picked the next thing that was closest to legal that I could find, and that was legal specialist. So legal specialist is pretty much like a paralegal in the civilian terms is what you consider that role. So I joined a civil affairs unit, which has all kinds of specialties in it. And civil affairs exist for the most part in the reserve side of the house because Army Reserve has all of the civil affairs assets except for there's one active duty unit at Fort Bragg. So civil affairs is highly deployed and highly utilized because it comes with all the different skill sets that you would typically find in a city. So you'd find sanitation, you'd find legal, you'd find medical, you'd find a bunch of the different MOSs that exist. And it's a really top heavy unit. So there's mostly officers in it. There's enlisted too, but it's very, very rank heavy because in a typical unit, you may have like 4 officers. We have like 20. So, I mean, it's really top heavy, full bird colonels that are doctors, and then a lot of captains and, lieutenants, second lieutenants, majors, quite a few majors. So it's really a unit that's designed. The whole mission set of a civil affairs unit is to go into an area and restart a community so that they get the civilians out of the battle captain's way so that they can perform military operations. So they help restart the community or resettle the community and get all their city functions running again so that they're out of the way and they're taken care of. So the battle or the battle captain and all the strategic planning can go ahead and go on. And then these folks that are displaced, or they call them dislocated civilians, perhaps, depends upon whether they can go back to their homes or not. But we take care of them and kind of get them organized again so they can take over everything. So we help get the police started. The policing started, medical started, sanitation, their city government, their schools, all of that. We help get that all started again so they can get back to life as they know it. But also what they do in that unit is not only do they take your Army specialty, they take your civilian specialty. So whatever your civilian specialty is, they may use you in that capacity versus actually using you for what you trained in the military. Because we had a lot of policemen that were part of that unit. So on the civilian side, that's their day job. So they were utilized in that capacity when they're downrange and helping those police forces downrange reset and regroup and get started again. And so the doctors, same way, they go to the hospital, start helping hospitals get back online, and sanitation engineers, all that, getting all those services back online. So really and truthfully, your civilians occupation mattered just as much as your military occupation.
Right. That's really interesting information, because we don't really give it enough thought as far as that. Most people, just your general civilian individual, thinks of military, they think automatically combat, and that's kind of it. So when we talk about those that assist in helping to get things back online, every little role that's played is very important, because without you, they wouldn't have the means to be able to be deployed overseas, because you've got the communication lines, you've got water, just your basic needs every day. And somebody has to be able to take care of that somehow, your supply lines. So just because somebody works stateside with a, in supply, packing stuff up, those little things, people, a lot of times, even those who did the job don't think that, they did anything important. And I beg to differ, because every role is important. Every role is needed.
Definitely. Yeah. So with the unit I was in, it's a service support unit. So when I joined, so this is what my recruiter told me. So when I joined, he's like, it's service support. So you're going to be in the rear. You're not going to be on the front lines. You're not going to be out there shooting up people. That's not your role. Your role is service support. So you're going to be in the back part of the back echelons of the war. Oh yeah, no, that's not the way that works. But that's what he said. Not that would have persuaded me one way or the other, but that's what he said. So yeah, there are a lot of service support units that back up the ones that are going forward and provide those services behind and then off to the side of the conflict. But the front line knows no front line, so it can be anywhere. So you can be right in the middle of everything. So that comment about, well, you're going to be in the back echelons, that doesn't really hold true, because the front line is wherever the enemy is, and you never know where they are, because in some instances in Afghanistan and places like that, the enemy was within, and we had problems that way, or we had interpreters that had ill intent. So you never know where that front line actually is. There isn't one. It is wherever there's troops and wherever there's people in conflict, that's the front line. So you never really can, say that it's here or it's there. It's everywhere when you're deployed.
I absolutely love how that was described by you. It really hits home a little bit more. And I'm sure not just for myself, but everybody listening and watching. I think that's amazing. Because you do put a whole new view on it that most people don't have the opportunity to really even stop and think about, right? So you graduate basic training. And actually, before I get too far, do you have any funny stories from your time in basic training that you recall?
I think I said this on Travis's show, but it was pretty funny. It was kind of embarrassing at the time, but it was funny. So all the equipment we use in basic training has been used hundreds of times by hundreds of people. So at some points, it's going to be taken out of service because things just don't work on the equipment anymore. So I had this Kevlar that I was wearing, and the snap would not stay snapped. So no matter what I did, the chin strap, because it would always hang down. And so the drill sergeant, what are you, John Wayne? We don't wear our chin straps like that. So I'm like, yes, drill sergeant. So I'm trying to snap it. Well, we go out to the grenade range and we're to throw grenades that day. Well, this chin strap will not stay on. I keep trying to button it. It won't stay on. So finally, a drill sergeant comes over with 100-mile-an-hour tape. He wraps it all the way around my head like this so that my Kevlar will stay on while we're on the grenade range. So we go out and throw grenades. All's good. No problem there. But then I get back on the Humvee not the Humvee, but the 5-ton to come back. And I'm trying to pull my hair out of all this 100-mile-an-hour tape because it's all stuck in there. Because, at some points after you wear a Kevlar, your braid, no matter how nicely and tightly you make it, it all starts to fly away. So all these flyaways are in the tape. And so I'm trying to peel my hair out of there and trying to unwrap my head from the Kevlar.
Oh my gosh, that had to be horrible. Did you have to cut a lot of it off?
No, it just got pulled out, but but it was, it wasn't one of my better moments for sure.
Oh, I have to say that's probably worse than peanut butter or gum in the hair.
Yeah, all my hairs were stuck in it, and I had silver tape all the way around my head, underneath my chin.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. So you graduate and then you go on to like an AIT, something along those lines for any additional training or?
Right. Yeah. So we had basic training at Fort Jackson. And then we were supposed to go to another post to do the legal specialist training, but they ended up closing it. So they made us stay at Fort Jackson, and I was so disappointed because they were telling me how nice this other post was and how, laid back, how easygoing it was, all this stuff. And then they're like, no, you're staying at Fort Jackson. I was like, oh, so I was a little disappointed, but it ended up being okay. It wasn't bad, but yeah. So we went to legal specialist training. There's only a small group of us. The rest of them were, they were 42 alphas. They were just admin specialists. So our group was really, really small. So the senior drill sergeant took us, and he was really cool. So we were happy that we got senior drill sergeant, and the other ones got the other two that were not so nice. So we were very happy to be the fortunate few that got senior drill sergeant.
Right. Yeah, that makes a difference, right? To find, some good leaders.
Right.
And have them that they really understand you, kind of the best role to be in, or the best way to treat the personnel.
Right.
Because sometimes that can be so toxic when you have somebody that just tanks morale.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about the training for the that you had for the legal. So.
Ours was 13 weeks, so it was a little bit of a longer training than what the admins had. And we actually got to help with some actual cases that were going on Fort Jackson, which was kind of interesting that we actually were working through some of the witness statements and through some of the judicial process that we actually got to do some of it as part of our learning and our curriculum is really some actual cases. So that was really pretty interesting. I was going to say it was an interesting training. It was all, as jobs go, it's all in classroom. So there's really no field exercise other than, we had to do some in AIT too. Don't get me wrong. We had to go out in the field and do a couple of those things, but our specialty was mostly, all sitting and listening and recording and doing all that. So it's not like it was super exciting going through it. Some of the things we got to hear about and we got to learn were interesting. And we got to hear some cases, that set precedent, that kind of thing. But as a job specialty goes, it wasn't probably one of the most glamorous or the most exciting ones I've been to because I retrained and had I have a couple other MOSs. So
okay,
this one was probably pretty tame, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Nice. So, all right. So you go through and you get through your training for that. And then where do you go to next? What's the next step for you?
Well, so since I'm a reserve, I go back home.
Okay.
And then I go back to my unit, and then, just weekend drills and 2 weeks a year, as they say, just, doing whatever training they have for us there. So, once released back to the unit, you're back to your regular job, back to doing regular stuff, and then just Army on the weekends, basically.
And so you talk about having other MOSs. Talk to us about how those came about for you.
Well, so I was in a civil affairs unit, and so my specialty, the top out, because there's only one of me, was E5. And they're like, you really need to cross train and do another MOS. You need to do 38 Alpha, which is civil affairs. It's now changed. They changed the numbering of all the MOSs in the last several years, but they were like, you really need to change your MOS just so that you'll have some mobility upward and get promoted and things like that, because otherwise you'll have to go to a new unit. We don't really want to lose you. So go ahead and cross train to 38 Alpha. So I did that. And that was really interesting. And that's all about, you learn, how to start city services again. And you learn about all these things. You learn how to brief the commander. You learn how to look for arts, monuments, and archives in an area. You learn how to really do an area assessment and really provide a detailed report on, something that's going to go to a battle captain or somebody that's going to be in the area, for them to learn about the country and really learn all the demographics, learn about all the infrastructure, learn about all the services that they would find in this particular place. So we had the training in San Antonio, which is, very historic, very old city that has a lot of rich history to kind of portray in a report and kind of talk about, you need to stay away from these areas. It has all these missions. It has these things and those things. So it was really fun putting together an area assessment of San Antonio and look at all the historic sites and, all the demographics of the area and all the topography and all those things that go along with that type of report. So even though it was something that you have to write, you get to go out and you survey all these things. So it wasn't like I was still sitting at a desk trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to try this case, and these are the witness statements, and these are the things. This was actually going out into the community, looking at everything, driving around, going to different sites and finding out about these different buildings, all these really old churches, these missions, all the historic sites in San Antonio, which there are a lot. So it was really an interesting MOS. I had a good time learning that, and then taking that on as a new job specialty.
That's incredible. So how would that relate to those that are, like, say, overseas? Is it something that if you were called up to active as a reserve, would you be stateside doing that? Would you be on site doing that?
So, with the reserves, it's foreign defense. So reservists aren't used homeland at all. There's very few cases where reservists are used homeland because we're foreign defense. So the wartime mission is to go overseas and to, do area assessments, have CAT teams that go out, civil affairs assistance teams. And they go out and they find people in the community. They talk to different people. They help find out information. They're collecting data, basically. So we have all these, like I talked about, all these different specialties that go out and talk to all these different people and find out information. And then collectively, we bring back all this information for whoever's operating in the area. We also help manage the dislocated civilian camps, if there are any. And like I said, we go get the city services restored so that those communities can get back to what they're doing. So we have a lot of different ways civil affairs are utilized when it comes to deployments. So that's the wartime mission. The peacetime mission is, I went to Jamaica and I did a mission there, and we were coordinating a med ready. So we were inoculating the city populace. We had a shot clinic, basically, is the I guess the simpler term to call it. And then we helped coordinate a well being drilled for the citizens there. And then there was this Windsor School for Girls that their side of their building was sliding off a hill. So we had the Red Horse engineers from the Air Force come in, and they were evaluating the building and then trying to make sure that this building was shored up so that this school could continue to operate. So basically, it's kind of like PSYOPs because we're in the SOF community, the Special Operation Forces community. Civil Affairs and PSYOP operate in the same use of KPOC higher command. So our mission is winning hearts and minds, basically just like PSYOPs, because that's what they do, is win hearts and minds. So Civil Affairs is a lot the same. So we bring things to people, and we just kind of smooth those community relationships so that we can do things we need to do in different areas, or we can get assistance doing things, or we can get help finding who we need to find. So we help coordinate all that for whoever's operating in the area. And a lot of our civil affairs operators, they were embedded in other teams to help talk to local populace. And we have linguists in civil affairs too, to help that would speak the different languages to help, bridge that language gap or that knowledge gap for a particular area. So the wartime and the peacetime mission are a lot the same, but like I said, in Jamaica, we coordinated having all these different projects going on the island. Just it's kind of a goodwill gesture type of thing.
That is really, really cool. I mean, when you think about that the utilization of the reserves in such a manner that in collecting that information, doing all of that, but yet, kind of like enables them, the rest of the Army, to be able to meet the goals that they're, or that mission that they have.
Definitely.
And I think that's great. So thank you for that. Okay. So you get through that, and cross-train into the new position. Yeah. And from there, what happens for you?
So I stayed with the unit for 12 years because I really enjoyed what they did. We had a mission in Central and South America, is where originally when I had joined, our mission set was in Belgium and in Germany and places like that. And then our area of focus shifted to Latin America. So all of our missions were down south. So for our 2-week annual tour, a lot of people went downrange doing civil affairs missions down there. So we would go down with other units that were deploying, and then we would be the spokesman between the unit deploying and the civilian populace. So we were always kind of the conduit where all the conversations were had between whoever was operating in the area and then the local populace. So that's really our role, or the role of civil affairs, is to facilitate those conversations. So I stayed for a long time because I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed what we did. And I thought we made a difference. And like I said, our units were highly deployed. A lot of people got really tired of civil affairs and they tried to get out, but we were stop loss, and they wouldn't allow any civil affairs to leave the job specialty because, like I said, there's only one active duty unit, and that's at Fort Bragg. Everybody else is in the reserves, that is civil affairs. So all the reserve assets for civil affairs were highly deployed, highly utilized, and the rotation, there's supposed to be like a reset and so much time in between deployments, but civil affairs never really got that because we were, because the active component couldn't handle the load of all the deployments that were necessary. So at some point I just decided I had moved to Texas, and I was living in Oklahoma, and I had moved to Texas, and I'm like, I can't keep driving 4 hours to drill and all that. It's like, it's taken all my extra money paying for gas and hotel and all that stuff, trying to get back to drill. So I was like, well, let me join something a little closer to home. And so I heard from another person that had been in my unit about a job that she was leaving, and she was being promoted into a new slot. And she was like, you should take my slot in Oklahoma. And it was in Oklahoma City. And it was with a group, they called them, well, it's changed names several times. It was with Fifth Army or Army North. And it was being an EPLO, so an emergency preparedness liaison officer. So she's like, you'll love this job. You work with an active duty colonel, you work with a Navy captain, and you work with an Air Force colonel. And you and that team go out and you do emergency preparedness in the area. So you go out and talk to all the local emergency managers, you attend all the emergency conferences, and you stand up whenever there's an emergency in the state. So that's the only job that reserves can do or have done without, because that EPLO role was the only one where we actually were activated for homeland defense.
Right.
Because reserves are foreign defense. That's their role. That's their mission set. That's what they do. But this was the only job where we actually stood up for some kind of homeland defense operation, because that's what the Guard does. The Air Guard and then Army Guard, they are set in their states, and they stand up if there's something that needs defense or needs to have happen in their own area. That's what they do, and that's their mission set. The only way they're deployed is if the president asks the governor if they can use their troops. So then they're, instead of Title 32 as a guardsmen, they turn to Title 10 at that point for deployment. But otherwise, they're homeland defense only. And, we're all reservists are always Title 10. But since this role was really for homeland defense, we were one of the only reserve teams that did this, and we had all the branches represented. So each FEMA region has a team that sits up there in the FEMA building of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Okay. They're all there, and they all talk to all the different divisions of FEMA. And so what we were is the DoD response in FEMA. So if FEMA needed search and rescue, if they needed high water vehicles, if they needed bridging, if they needed just like getting people evacuated off the coast for a hurricane, anything like that, that was what we did. We were the DoD response for FEMA in doing whatever they needed to do that would require military assets. So our team coordinated with the unit that was doing the work, and we would engage them and track them and just follow them through their mission to completion. And then we would do all the paperwork behind that, and we would forward deploy. Anytime FEMA would go forward, we would go forward. So I don't know how many times we ended up at the coast, because anytime the wind blew hard in Louisiana, that's where we were. We deployed a lot of times for all the hurricanes. And then if there's ice storms, if there's floods, tornadoes, anything like that, we stood up our team. So there's a group at the FEMA region. So we were in FEMA region 6. So that's in Denton, Texas for us. So there was a team there with all the branches represented, and then in all the states. So FEMA region 6 has 5 states. So they have Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Louisiana. And so there's a team of 3 in each one of those states, except for Texas had a little bit bigger team because Texas is so big.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
That's right.
Show offs. Wow. Okay. And then how long did you fill that position, that role?
So that one I think was another 12 years. So I had to actually cross train to be admin for that job. I don't know why, but I had to cross train to be, they called them 71 Limas at the time. Now they're 42 Alphas. I was a 42 Alpha for this role. Why? I don't know. I guess because I did paperwork. I don't know. But so I had to cross level again. So I have 3 MOSs, basically all the same, just supporting whatever's going on. So that's my MOS, is supporting whatever's going on.
Wow. And now, okay, so in total, how long were you with the reserves?
33 and a half years.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And then in that time, did you have a favorite thing that you were able to do or accomplish?
Well, so after I eventually left that role and I went to work at Southcom in Miami, and I loved that. I loved that. I got there my very first day, and they're like, you're really assigned to the sergeant major, but we're going to use you up here doing admin work in our S1. And I was like, and which is just an admin section. It's just somebody that does pay, does promotions, does separations, all those things, just all the admin work. Since I was a 42 Alpha, that's what they hired me for, basically, was because I found the job and looking at so actually I ended up, so here's the real story. So I retired from the Eplo job. I retired and I was like, I'm just too busy. I can't take time off work. This is just getting too much. And I'm like, I just can't do it both. So I stayed in the IRR for a year. And then I was like, and you still get points for being in there because you're not actually out of the military. So you still get points for being there. And I was like, I miss the boots. I just can't sit here and do nothing. I just can't. And so I looked for a role. So the role I found was in Miami. And so the slot they had open was another admin slot. So I messaged them and I'm like, look, I really want this role. I'm really interested. And they're like, okay. And so I talked to St. Louis, and now it's Kentucky, our HR for Army. I talked to them and I'm like, okay, I really want back in. They're like, that's really hard. I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, you got to get somebody to accept you. And I'm like, okay, done. So I messaged I'm like, I need a letter that says you want me. And they're like, okay, done. So they send a letter and he's like, yeah, but it takes a long time to get this done and you need a security clearance. I'm like, I have it. And they're like, oh. And they're like, well, publishing orders really takes a long time and it's a really heavy lift for you to get back in. And I'm like, really? Okay. So I went to the unit. I said, look, they're needing this paperwork and they're saying it's going to take a long time. They're like, oh, hold up. I got this. So then they send a note over there and they're like, I had orders within the week to get back in and signed to Miami. And I loved it down there. And so I got there and they said, yeah, you're assigned to the Sergeant Major's office and you're the DCMRA, which it's a big acronym, meaning that I work for the Sergeant Major. And then they're like, but we're going to use you upstairs. He'll never know you're here. And I'm like, okay. So then I'm trying to get settled up there. And then all of a sudden it's like, Sergeant Major wants to see you. I'm like, what did I do? I've only been here a day. Like, how am I already in trouble?
How did he know you were there?
I know. It's like, good grief. And so I go down there and he's like, you're assigned to me. And I'm like, yes, Sergeant Major, I know. And he's like, but he said, the chaplain's office next door has no admin in it, and they really need some help. So I'm going to assign you over there. I'm like, the chaplain's office? Like, do we have one? Is that such a thing in the military? Wow. Do we have a chaplain? And he's like, yes, we do. And yes, you are. And I was like, yes, Sergeant Major, I'll go work for the chaplain's office. So I worked for the chaplain's office and I worked with the state partnership program because I spoke Army and they were Navy. So they didn't speak Army. So they wanted me in there to speak the Army speak. To help them navigate, since all the state partnership programs exist in the National Guard. So I could talk the Guard language, even though I wasn't Guard, but we're still Army. We still speak same language. So it worked out. So I really enjoyed that. And I was an IMA, which is different than a traditional reservist. An IMA is an individual mobilization augmentee. And so all my drills and all my 2 weeks all were combined, and I went once a year. So I had like 45 days in Miami, and I would really cover down. So the active duty that was assigned to that office, they would go do their training or whatever, and then I became their active duty fill.
Wow.
So that was fun.
And how long did you fill that role?
8 years.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What an incredible run with the military. I mean, overall. It's hard enough, sometimes staying in a job for 12 years, let alone, a total of 33. That's
actually, I think it's 6 years. I think I was wrong on that. I think it was 6 years with Miami. Yeah.
Which is still incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
It was a lot of fun.
So what was it then that made you decide that you wanted to retire out, that you wanted to leave the military?
They told me this is your mandatory removal date and you will retire.
So you had no choice. Would you have kept going
Yes.
if you had given the chance?
Yes. Yes, I would have. Absolutely. I'd still be drilling in Miami this summer if I could.
That's awesome. You're getting ready to separate, to retire. Mm-hmm. And what, if any, resources did the Army provide for you on transitioning back into civilian life? I mean, obviously it's different for those that are in the reserves because you have that time where you're a civilian. Mm-hmm. But did they provide anything, any resources of any kind for that? No, they really didn't, because it was an active duty unit. So, I mean, in that unit, though, there was all kinds. That was such a multi-force unit, you just couldn't even imagine, because there was foreign armies in Southcom. So there's Coast Guard Reserve, Marine Reserve, Navy Reserve, Army National Guard, Army Air Guard, Air Force Reserve, Army Reserve. Space Force, I think, now has a seat. But all these units come together for the mission set, which was down in Latin America too, by the way. So all these units are different and they all operate together, but they're all separate at the same time. Right. So since it's such a multi-combined unit with all these different services, it's really hard for them to okay, this is your path, this is this. So they really have an element from each service really kind of trying to marry up with whoever's needing services and providing those. But we didn't have a lot for Army Reserve for whatever reason that I could tap into. So I had gone through like a pre-retirement type thing when I had originally went to the IRR for a short time, but it was like one weekend and that was it. And then like I had they were like, we have to have this form signed. So I was like, okay, who do I call? So I called this person and he's like, oh yeah, give me your form, I'll sign it. I'm like, don't you have to counsel me or something? He's like, no, I'll just sign it. I'm like, okay, well, so there really wasn't like a handoff, a warm handoff for me to any of these things. It's like, figure it out on your own. So when I went to file my retirement paperwork, there was no one to help me. And I just swagged it. I was like, I'm just going to figure it out and hope it goes through. So I turned in my packet. And then about 6 months later, or maybe it's 4 months, later, then I finally ended up, that I'd done it right and they actually gave me a paycheck. So I was like, That's
okay.
I
was like, okay, apparently I did what I needed to do. But yeah, there wasn't really anybody kind of helping me walk through it since, I was a reservist and the unit I was at was active duty. They don't really understand that piece of it because I worked for an active duty Navy captain. And so he doesn't speak Army at all, and he didn't understand it. And then my direct supervisor was an Air Force full-time active, so she doesn't understand it. So the office I was actually assigned to, the DCMRA, was actually the reserve element in the building that was supposed to help transition people. So that's what that office kind of did in that environment.
Okay. So since you got out, tell me how that went for you once you got out full time. What did you do?
So it's you're missing a piece of yourself once you retire. You're not putting on the boots anymore. You're not engaging with like work, because with reservists, it sounds like you're only working 1 weekend a month and
Right.
2 weeks a year. Oh, no. You work all 30 days. You just don't get paid for it. So you're used to having work, between when you meet for drill, you're used to doing all this paperwork, all these things. You're used to making phone calls. You're used to providing whatever they need. So really, there's a lot of work in between drills. And just like when I was in Miami too, same thing. Like they were like, okay, you have to attend this meeting, you have to attend that meeting. So I'm having to like work through my lunch and attend a meeting, or I'm having to like take vacation so I can attend some of these meetings or something like that, because there's always something going on. So it's not like you're just limited to those 2 weeks or to that drill weekend. You're actually working all weekend or all month long and just not getting any pay for it.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I mean, so you're used to just working is my point.
Right.
So
Right.
when you stop drilling and you're no longer in the reserves, you're like, now what? You're missing something. It's just like when you're going to school and you have homework and then you don't because you finished, and then you're like, now what? There's got to be something that goes in and replaces that, because you're used to just genning up whatever. You're used to generating homework, or you're used to generating like things that are going to help you at drill, but you're just used to doing things. So it's like, well, what do I do now? So then I was like, I don't know what I do next. So I had started my master's degree while I was still finishing up my Army Reserve career. And so I finished that up. So that helped kind of bridge that gap a little bit. But then I'm like, okay, so now I'm graduating. Now what? And so I was like, I saw in the VA newsletter that they were offering podcasting for veterans. And I was like, I've always wanted to start a podcast. So I was like, well, let's see what that's about. So I contacted Joel Hunt, who, is with Military Broadcast Radio, which we're on today. And he's like, yeah, we'll get you started. So I started my podcast on drill weekend in Miami from my hotel room, along with doing my civilian job, doing my homework, and doing my podcast and drilling. So I was like, okay, so that kind of then set me up to like ease out of things, sort of. And so this podcasting has really kind of helped me reconnect with veterans and the military community that, you miss when you take off the uniform. So it really helps to put that kind of missing piece back together, I think.
Right. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and the name Tracer Rounds.
So I started the podcast Memorial Day weekend in 2024. So that was the very first podcast for the Tracer Rounds show, or the podcast at that time. And I picked the name because I really liked tracer rounds. I really liked firing them. I really loved night fire and firing tracers. I love to see them. And we started a lot of fires too. We had to call the fire department. So, it's best not to shoot tracers in the dry heat of the summer.
Yes.
Just note to self for future reference. But no, I love tracers. And I thought, and then tracers really show, it kind of talks to my thought process around the name is, if you fire a tracer, it's for a couple of reasons. One is showing you the direction of your travel, or it's showing you maybe where the enemy is, showing somebody else where the enemy is. I mean, it's kind of a twofold mission of a tracer. And so from me, a tracer round is kind of showing people where to focus and maybe redirecting. And so a tracer in my mind is kind of putting people on the path they should go, because it's showing you, it's lighting up your path of travel, or your, I'm trying to think of the right way to say that. I'm not doing a very good job.
No, you're doing great. I think most everybody that's listening, they understand what you're saying. It basically helps guide you into a new direction, or a different direction that may
Yeah, if you
be
need to adjust your path because you're not
Yeah.
on the right one.
exactly.
So my show, really, I want to highlight veterans and their stories and really get them out there and documented for history.
Yes.
But then I also want to support veteran artists, music artists, or authors, or businesses that are owned by veterans, or businesses that support veterans, or first responders too, for that matter. Because those communities sometimes are underserved in some ways. They're served well in others, but some ways they're really underserved. They don't really understand the impacts to what first responders and veterans see and do. And so having resources and really telling stories and really getting the message out there is so important to me.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And it appears we have a lot in common in that regard. So thank you for that. Now, in your area, what resources have you found for yourself that, specific for veterans?
Really, I interview people all over. So I haven't really interviewed a lot of people here in Texas. That's where I am. I did interview one group that really does help, really active duty, and they'll help veterans too, but mostly active duty. They send care packages if they are needing like different things. They can call them and they will try to resource those items and get them to them. So I highlighted them. They were one of my first, I guess, on my list of people to interview to have on my show. So I found that local resource for veterans. But really, I think I've had the most authors and musicians come on the show.
Same.
And I really love supporting their music. So MBR has a music channel. So we load veteran artist songs. And so on our channel, every 5 songs is a veteran artist. So we play a lot of veteran artists on our platform. And then we play a lot of other artists too, like general music. We play top 40 or whatever. We have country, we have some jazz, we have a little bit of everything. So we really try to support veterans that way too, by getting their music out there. So just recently we had all of our veteran artists make a promo for us. So that way people heard their voice and their name, and we play those, as kind of a station ID, just kind of making sure people can connect with who it is that they may be hearing on the platform. So we highlight them that way.
Yeah. And yes, so Jason said I needed to connect you with one of my guests, and has become a good friend over the last few years. And he is in Texas, so
nice.
I will see about that here after the show. So
perfect.
So all right, if you had somebody in front of you who is interested in joining the military, what words of wisdom do you have for them?
I would say exercise and get ready for it and be prepared. And when you step your feet off the bus, just know you're not back on the block. No, I would tell them, that it's a great career. Everybody asks me, would you tell them go Army? I'd say no, I'd tell them go Air Force, because they live larger and in charge, and they live a lot nicer than we do. When I deployed to Jamaica for the mission set that was down there, the Red Horse was the ones we were supporting, and they were the Air Force element, and they came loaded for bear. They built canopies for their platforms for their tents. They brought in washers and dryers. They brought in TVs. They brought in all these things. Like, they were living large, and each person got to bring in this great big old crate full of their own personal items. So there were shower curtains hanging up as curtains in the tents. There was lamps. There was rugs. And I was like, good grief. I had a duffel bag. I was like, apparently they live a lot larger than I do, because I brought a duffel bag and a sleeping bag, and they had all these things. And I was like, good gravy. Like, they live nicely compared to Marines and Army. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I would tell everybody, truly, I love the Army, and I wouldn't steer anybody away from it. But what I would say is, if you want a job that relates more to civilian work, join the Air Force, because most of their jobs will relate to something in the civilian workforce very nicely. It will transition. Army does too, depending depending upon what it is that you've chosen to do. Some don't. Besides, some of the combat MOSs will translate to first responders in some way, or some of the admin jobs will translate. And I was human resources too. I forgot. Okay, hold on. I transitioned to human resources. That's what it was. So that's what 42F is, human resources. I said admin, but it's human resources. So I transitioned that job nicely into human resources on the civilian side. So I would say if you're trying to decide on a service, decide what you want to do once you get out of the service, and how you can link that to a civilian occupation, because really that's what it is linking what you'll do after service, after you take off the uniform. You want to find a job that you can easily transition. But, Army, I wouldn't trade one day. Even though I had to give up a lot, I got a lot out of it. So I would say you can't go wrong by joining the Army, but I would just say prepare yourself. I would just say make sure you're physically fit. Make sure you understand you're going to be in an open bay room with all these different people with all these different attitudes, and you got to learn how to get along. Because if you can't get along, that's going to be the showstopper for everything else. So you just have to learn how to deal with people, how to talk to people, how to communicate on their level, because not everybody thinks the same way or acts the same way or learns the same way. So you really have to work on your communication, and you really have to work on patience.
Right.
Yes. Hurry up and wait.
Yes. That's wonderful. So for anybody in the chats, if you have a question for Terri, go ahead and get those put in now. And just so that everybody's aware. So I have a guest coming on next Sunday on the 24th. And then on the 2nd, Tuesday, the 2nd of June, I'm going to be a guest on Terri's show, Trace Around. So really excited for that. And that's going to be at 7 p.m. Central Time. So be sure to check that out as well. And I think I should be able to stream that also to my channel, but again, I'm not 100% sure yet.
I think you can, yeah.
So, okay. So, but yeah, this has been wonderful. And I've learned a lot about the reservists. And I mean, obviously, as I've said throughout all of this, every role in the military is important. But you don't really understand until you hear it from somebody who's been in a role such as yours, and the impact that you make along the way for those who are, that are depending on you. So I think it's incredible what you've done. I think it's incredible what you continue to do. And I am really honored to have had you tonight on the show. So thank you for that. I'm going to give a couple more minutes here for any comments, but in the interim, for anybody who is interested, in following the channel, please feel free to go to my channel, Conversations with a Vet. You can go to directly on YouTube. You can go through MB Radio. I'm on now Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube for MB Radio, Twitch, and X. And I also did finally get set up, but I'll have to set it up for the next show for Rumble. So I do have that one. So we're pushing it out. Please help to share the conversation with family and friends, and make sure to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of these great interviews with our wonderful veterans. I still don't see any comments, but we do have a couple that said thank you very much for your service. So appreciate that. And going back to the conversation portion where we talked about women being better shooters. So Jose said when he was in, many of the females were excellent in firing their weapons. And then he meant to say one of his best commanders was a female and a great leader. So
Well, female drills in the Army are scary. Because we had males for our daily cadre of drill sergeants, but there was a female that was actually assigned, and she was away at training. So she came back one day. And so she looked at us and she smoked us for like an hour. And she's like, these males don't know what you can do, but I do. So we're going to smoke you, and we're going to put you through your paces. So she smoked us for an hour, and we were like, okay, we're going to be really glad when she leaves, because we didn't like her at all. She was hard, but the female drill sergeants have to work twice as hard as the males to be respected and to be thought of as a leader, or as a somebody to to be equal. And so we saw some in the chow hall that were like really mean. Like they would get in people's faces, and they would like actually like grab onto them and stuff. We're like, wow, like they were really aggressive. And we were like, I'm so glad we have these male drills, because they are chill compared to her.
That's funny. That is so funny. And you would think, being in the role of a recruit, but female, and that she started as in the same position, and she would have appreciated, well, maybe not, I don't know, I can't speak for that. There are different women, maybe that's what pushed her to be who she was, right?
Maybe,
who knows?
So
but so Ron says, another terrific show. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you,
Jason,
Ron.
Great show. Thank you for your time and your
Jason.
story. Mrs. Wayne, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Where'd she go? There she is. Been lurking and watching.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Ron Wayne's wife. Another great shot. And so I want to thank everybody, each and every one of you, for coming out tonight. Be sure to join me again next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time. And as I said, we've got another great guest coming up then. So again, thank you, each and every one, for showing up tonight. Terri, again, thank you very much. If you want to hang tight for me, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a good night and a wonderful rest of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.